welcome to or welcome back to Book and Prejudice. My name is Matt, and today I'm going to give you some of my recommendations for summer reading lists, because during the summer is when most people do their most reading. You know, the weather's nice, people don't have school, people usually have holiday. So I thought, why not give you some ideas in case you don't know what you want to read. And also because it has been raining here for 4 days now, and I'm talking pouring. This is me after a 6-minute walk from the gym to my house. And I thought, you know what? I just want to picture myself on the beach with a good book. So here we are. This is basically therapy at this point. Anyways, let me get started. I have them as always in my journal. And first of all, I've divided this into different categories. So we have series, fantasy, mystery, thriller, rom-coms, and general fiction, because I couldn't think of one else to call it, like contemporary fiction maybe, I don't know. But these are my recommendations for each category. So let's start with book series. First of all, obviously Throne of Glass. I read Throne of Glass 2 summers ago, and I'm so happy that I read it during the summer, because I was so obsessed with every book. I couldn't stop reading. I was on holiday with my family, have no idea where we went on holiday, have no idea what we saw. I just remember thinking of Selena Sardossian. Boo, 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 boo. It's fantastic. It's a very long series. It's 8 books if you count the Assassin's Blade, I think. And it's just so good. The only thing is, obviously, because it's quite long, I didn't finish it in, make sure that you start early on. So, if you choose to read it, buy these books or get these books right after you see this video, because it will take a little bit. It took me about a month and a half to read them, and I'm a fast reader, so do with that information as you wish. The second series that I recommend is ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas as well. I read this book series as well last summer, so I do book series in summer, as you can see, because it was when I had time. And I'm so happy that I did, because I loved it so much. I thought it was brilliant. Then A Court of Silver Flames came out not long ago, so I got to reread them, but obviously I had this story in my brain because I just read it, and I just think that it's a perfect book for summer, just because it is so much fun and it is so interesting to read, and that you get to really immerse yourself in characters. And that's just really nice, you know, that's really enjoyable. And so I would really recommend that. The only thing is that the novella that it has, A Court of Frost and Starlight, does take place in Christmas. Personally, I don't care for that. If that might be a problem, maybe don't read ACOTAR. And lastly, we have A Darker Shade of Magic by V. Schwab. I'm not done with this series, but I can already tell you that you want to read this series and that you should read in the summer, because like that, again, you have a lot of time to get involved with the story. I think that it's a brilliant series. It's not too long, it's only 3 books, so it won't be like a whole summer project situation, but it's so interesting, and the way V. Schwab writes, you feel transported to a new world. And I think that because traveling is still quite hard, you can't really go to London without quarantining at this point. That's basically where we're at. So you get to go to London and to experience all of these magical worlds and cities without actually having to travel, and that is normally the beauty of books, but even more so now that we cannot actually travel. Okay, next up we have fantasy, and I don't know why I call this fantasy when really, honestly, it's mythology. And yes, they're making a comeback once again, always and forever. Circe and the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I'm gonna push these books on everyone until the day I die. Read them, they're amazing, lovely. This place takes place in an island, so you get to, and has a lot of metaphors for the sea, and the sea is very present in it. So definitely read this one, because again, we cannot really travel to an island, so you might as well read it. And this one, part of it takes place in a beach. So again, you could potentially think of that. But honestly and seriously, these books are really good. They're not very big, so they won't take you a very long time to read. And they're very interesting, and they just are so entertaining that a lot of times during the summer, and people don't like to admit this, but a lot of times during summer you get a bit bored. So these 2 books are perfect for not getting bored, for like killing those I'm from Spain, so for killing those mid-afternoon hours in which is 40 degrees and you can't really go out. So definitely recommend these two books. I won't die recommending them because I just love them so much. I've spoken at length about both of them, so I won't go into much detail. But if you don't know what to read, pick up one of these. They are fantastic, and you know, they're perfect for killing a few hours every day for the next couple of months. The next category is mystery/thriller, and I have so many books for this category because if there's one thing I love and one thing that my mom loves and my grandmother loves, you know, the non-existential book club that I'm part of or trying to be, is a good thriller. You know, for those who don't know Camilla Lagerberg, she's got like a bunch of these books that they all take place in like this really small town in Sweden, and I swear to God, this town is haunted or something. This is not even the recommendation, but this is how I got into reading thrillers. There's a point to the story. The town has been basically haunted and bad things keep happening. It's not actually haunted, but like might as well be, because people keep getting killed, children keep getting kidnapped, you know, it's just very miserable, really. I wouldn't recommend living in that town. But I started reading those when I was 12, 13 because my mom and my grandma were reading them, so I would just grab them when they were done. And from then on, I associate summer with freaking thrillers and murder, as you will be able to see now. First book recommendation, I don't own it because it's my mom's. It is The Truth About the Herrick-Bertha Affair. Oh my god. This book is really good. This is by Joel Dicker. And this book is fantastic because it is so interesting, like the way he writes. And then at the end of it, as in any good thriller, there is a plot twist. And there's no way you can guess it. I know a lot of people that have read this book. No one has guessed it. And my grandmother looks like she can guess anything, and she didn't guess it. Nobody. It's so good. So I definitely would recommend reading that one. It takes place in like this really like idyllic town, and it's just very nice. And I would definitely give it a shot because it's very good. So do that. Next up, again, a book that I've talked about till blue in the face. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I love this book so much. I thought it was fantastic. Again, atmospherically, this makes more sense for autumn, winter, but if you don't care for that, this is your book. This is so good. This is amazing. The suspense, the way it's written, the narcissistic and selfish yet lovable characters are incredibly moving, and because it's a story that you get so enthralled by, that you're just so into from the get-go, it's just perfect if you're looking to, you know, get lost in a book, because if push comes to shove, you can finish this in a day or two. So it's definitely a good recommendation that I would give you guys, even though it does atmospherically take place during the winter and the snow has a really big role within. So if that's not a big problem for you, read it. If it is, don't worry, I'm gonna keep talking about it until you do. Next up is The President is Missing by James Patterson and Bill Clinton. This is a fantastic book. This book is really good. It talks about the president disappearing all of a sudden, except that he doesn't. And there's a real reason for it, and he cannot talk about it. And what I like about this is that James Patterson is a brilliant thriller writer. He's written Alex Cross. He's written like a lot of really good stuff. But I like Bill Clinton's perspective because it had all of these like little secrets about the White House, the Secret Service, things that a normal person shouldn't and wouldn't know, which gives it this coat of authenticity that James Patterson wouldn't probably be able to achieve. I read this book in a day, which is a lot, but then again, I'm a fast reader. However, my fiance read it in 2 days, and he's not the fastest reader, so definitely give it a shot. My grandmother loved it. I feel like we should have like a grandma scale. If any book my grandmother has read and she liked it, I should put it there. And then the reason you have to read this is because they've written another one. The President's Daughter is has disappeared, something about the president's daughter. And that's coming out, I think, in September. So you should probably get going, because this is very good. I don't think it's the same president, but you know, it's the same sort of political thriller. And I really, really like it. It's so interesting. It's just, it highlights very well very real problems that we're faced with right now. It highlights very well the current international climate that we're seeing, the disregard for other countries, the distrust and the inability to be loyal even though you want to, because of your country's interest, go against another country's interest. And you know, at the end of the day, politics is very much a mind game, especially international politics. And this book is highlighting every single bad aspect for it. Like, just the first sentence, man. Thursday, May the 10th. It has like that vibe. It starts with the House Select Committee will come to order. So you already know there's a hearing. And, you know, it's a very good book. I would recommend reading this around the 4th of July, just for the fancies of it all. You know, you might as well be patriotic, even if you're not American. But yeah, I could not highlight and recommend this book any more than what I do. This is fantastic. Okay. This is The Cartel by Don Winslow. This is my comfort read. When I don't know what to read, you can tell as well. Like, you can tell this book has been through hell. When I don't know what to read, I buy this book, because I got it in an airport going somewhere. I don't know where I was going. I got it in the summer holidays though, and I read the back, and it is insane. This book, first of all, it's very graphic. Trigger warnings for violence, for sexual violence, for assault, for really, really bad language, for drug use, for like literally every trigger warning you can think of comes with this book, because this is hard. This follows the story of Arthur. What's your name? Well, I can't remember his name. Is it Arthur? I think it's Arthur. It's you, Arthur. Arthur Keller. This follows the story of Keller. And his job within the DEA. And this book is the second one. I haven't read the first one or the third one, but you can really read it as a standalone, because I was able to. And it follows his story after he leaves the DEA, and how he gets thrown back into the war against drugs that the United States was fighting and is still fighting against Mexico. And you know, it also has really, like, it's a very violent book. It's basically this guy trying to ruin the other guy's, Barrera's, life, because Barrera is a drug dealer. He's the biggest narco in Mexico, and Keller's whole life mission is to get him, and suddenly he escapes, so they call him again. Yes, I don't think that's a spoiler. It might have been a spoiler, I apologize. So he gets called back in and has to find Barrera again. And it also has a really interesting subplot. It has many subplots. Like, there's like, we follow many perspectives throughout this book. My favorite one is El Niño's, the child's. I think it's called El Niño in English as well. And I love his perspective because it showcases the effect that narco life and the war on drugs can have on children. And I'm not talking about children that die or that lose their parents. I'm talking about children that just lose themselves within. Let's leave it at that. So yeah, this is very weird for a comfort read, just because, as I said, it's very big. It's over 800 pages. And it's very violent. It's very hard to read. But I really recommend this if you have time to read it, and if you want to almost educate yourself into something that it's not very common to hear about anymore. Don Winslow has done very extensive research and worked with the DEA, not as part of the DEA, but worked with them to give this book a lot of authenticity. And it's really interesting. My goal is to read all of them at once, but I haven't had time, and I want to buy them in Spanish because I have it in Spanish. I have it in English in my Kindle. This is why I say this is my comfort read. I at all times have this book in my phone. So if at any point I don't know what to do, I'll just read it in English in my phone. But it's just so good. Like, It's so scary though. It's very scary. It's a very scary book. Some parts, I've read this book many times and it still is very scary. It really is. But I love it. I would recommend this book to anyone that can stomach it. My copy, however, is destroyed. Jesus. I never noticed that, but it has bullets on the actual hard copy. I don't know, it's just a really, really good book. I've had this for years and years. I've had it since I was 17 or 18, I think. So yeah, The Cartel by Dawn Winslow. Probably my favorite comfort read of all time. Okay, next up I have Frederick Forsyth's El Manifiesto Negro, which translates to Icon. And this is a summer read. Again, this is a summer read because I just read it in summer. And now I just associate it with summer for me. This was stolen from my grandmother. And I don't know if it was my grandma's or my godfather's. One of them bought this book. It doesn't say anything inside of who owns it, does it? No. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Well, I don't know whose book it is, but I stole this. I was in my grandmother's house and I started reading it the summer before I left for university, and I didn't finish it by the time I left. I was there to I spent there a couple of days, and I was going to leave and I hadn't finished it, and she was like, why don't you just take it? And I was like, okay. And I did, to several countries, and now it's in London. And I have been very honest with her. She knows that I have it, and I'm like, you're not seeing this book back. It's one of my favorite books. It's so interesting. And this talks about the Russian and American relationships. Let me see if I can translate because it's in Spanish. So it's about the Russian electoral system. There's about to be an election, and this guy called Igor Komarov is supposedly about to win. However, the Western world discovers that he is in the bounds to become a new Hitler. So they are like, this dude cannot win. If this dude wins, we're gonna be like, there's gonna be a lot of chaos and potentially World War III. So they sent this guy called I don't know. They sent this spy to go and just snoop around and basically tamper with the election, which is literally what the Americans said that the Russians did in 2016. The irony of the world. But yeah, I really like it. Frederick Forsyth writes really well. He really does. He really brings you in the story, and you really feel like, you know, you really feel like he's writing in such detail that you can very easily see everything. I don't know. This is apparently his best novel, apparently. I just think it's such a great book. I really like it. It's I would like to point out something though. This book was published in okay. This book was published in 1996. I would like to point out that at that point, there was still a lot of Western narrative that was created to go against Russia and the USSR. Okay, the remnants of the Cold War were very much still there, and it shows, especially in this book. The way they paint Russia, I don't think is an accurate representation of the country. I think, however, that he's a British man and he was a product of his upbringing, and he started writing in the 80s and in the 90s, and in the 80s and in the 90s, Russia and the USSR was still a very prominent enemy. So there is no point denying that the way Russia is represented, I am not Russian. If you're Russian and watching this video, and by any chance have read this book, please let me know if this is an accurate representation, because I don't think it is. I think that it's very much a product of its time, and therefore the things the Russians do, the things they say, it needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. Because I think without realizing this is anti-USSR propaganda, because just as the way things were at the time, and I'm not excusing it, but you need to understand context is important. In this case, context means that this might be not the most realistic. I still, however, think it's very interesting to read. Frederick Forsyth writes really well. So if you want to read it, I definitely would recommend reading it. It just comes with, you know, that little knowledge. But it's really interesting. It's about spies. It's like James Bond and stuff, but not really. Not James Bond. Okay, I think that's all for mysteries. Next up, we have rom-coms and fluffy books. And you guys know I don't love these books. I would like to take this moment to apologize to every single one of my friends that I texted, hey, give me fluffy recommendation books. I have added none of them. You're welcome, I'm sorry. But yeah, the first one we have is Belgravia by Julian Fellowes. And I talked at length about how much I hated Snobs by Julian Fellowes. But at the same time, I love Belgravia. I loved it so much. It takes place, I think it's in the 1815s, and people are like going to balls, and there's like something happens within the first like 20 minutes of the book, and you don't find out what it is until the end of the book. So technically it's like a mystery, but it's such a beautiful love story as well. I just think it's so beautiful. You will read it and you will like it, and you will just feel so warm and fuzzy while you read it. And then you'll also bring into question a lot of the beliefs that existed at the time. So for example, I don't want to say what the big thing is, but let me see if I can get around it. Okay, so when the book starts, they're in a ball in Brussels, and they find out that Napoleon is advancing towards Brussels. So the party that they were in is cut short. However, 25 years later, in 1830, I guess? No, in 1840, they suddenly realized that, you know, the main character and their family have moved to Belgravia, which is in London. Very nice area, very expensive. And, you know, there's a lot of gossip going around them. And there's a beautiful love story that takes place throughout the book that is so heartbreaking, and I just wish I could go back there and give the woman a hug and tell her it's okay, you did great, you did the best that you could given your circumstances, because she really did. At least I think so. Maybe you disagree with me. Read the book and tell me if you disagree with me. Also, I really like books that are about like social climbing and this loose thing that comes around with it, you know. They got like families that suddenly make it a lot of money, and how did this money come? And that is literally like 80% of this book, and I love it. They suddenly have so much status. The trencher bards, I think they were called. The trench bards? I think something like that. And they suddenly have so much status, and they're so worried about what happened that night 25 years ago that they're like protecting it so fiercely that it almost becomes more than what it should have been, if you know what I mean. Okay, the next book is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I hated this book. The only reason this book is in here is because I feel like a lot of people would love to read this in the summer. That's literally the only reason I didn't like it. But it goes about this woman called Stella Lane who has, I believe it's Asperger's, and her mom wants her to have a boyfriend, get married, and have children. So she hires an escort that is going to teach her how to have sex, basically. And you know, X, Y, and Z happens, and then we're at the end. I don't want to spoil it because it's I think it's pretty obvious what happens, but up to you guys. I think it's a great book for the summer, however, because it is fluffy, it is light, it doesn't like make you think much. So if you're like in the beach and you have like the sun squinting in your eyes and you're like, I want to read a book because I'm bored and I don't want to go on my phone because it's going to overheat, you can grab this because you can sort of read fairly quickly and not get bored but I got bored. I didn't like it. It's just good. It's fluffy comedy, rom-com stuff. I don't like fluffy rom-com stuff. And last but not least, there's American Royals. In the grandma scale, she hated this book. And then she went ahead and recommended it to everyone and said, Mart liked this, but this is trash. Snaky little woman. But I loved it. I thought the first one was great. The second one, I literally donated it, forgot about it, no longer part of my life. This one is great. And this is definitely a summer read. And not just because she's wearing sunglasses, although that does help. This book follows the Washingtons. And there are 3 siblings. I think, yes, 3 siblings, but it follows 5 perspectives. It follows the Washingtons' perspective. So Beatrice, Samantha, and Jeff. So Beatrice is going to be queen one day. Samantha and Jeff are like twins, and Samantha is like the rebellious one, if you know what I mean. And Jeff is just kind of chilling, frankly. And then they also followed Nina and Daphne. Nina is Sam's best friend, and Daphne is Jefferson's girlfriend. And it's a really fun read, you know. It gives you an idea of what would have happened if Washington had become king, and what would it potentially look like now. It also paints the society in a very progressive light, which I really like. You know, having a queen is not that common. We have not that many queens by birthright, rather. We have a lot of kings, we have a lot of queen concerts, but we don't have that many queens. So it's a really, really interesting book. And if you're gonna read this, then you should also read Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's about the son of the president of the United States and the son of the British Crown, the future King of England. And it is fantastic. It is so beautiful. I actually think I like that one more than American Royals because it is so stunning. The story is so good. I just loved it so much. So much. I swear to God, I love that book. I think that it is beautiful. It does a really good job of representing a very, very repressed group. And you know what? It's Pride Month. It's so beautiful. It made me so happy, and I didn't want to read it because I don't like that type of novels, and I'm so happy that I did. Anyways. And last but not least, we're in the category of general fiction, contemporary fiction. I don't know what to call it, frankly. And we're gonna start with 10 minutes, 38 seconds in this Strange World by Leif Shafak. I've spoken at length about this book, and I loved it so, so much. It's so beautiful. Read this if you're in a quiet room, because the smell and the colors and the general atmosphere that this book gives you is insane, and you want to take it in as much as you can. It will break your heart in like a million tiny pieces. Definitely think it's worth it. I definitely think it is, at least. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This book is really good for summer, first of all, because it takes place in a marsh, which is water, which is where everyone wants to be when it's warm. So that's the main reason you should read it. But also because it's a pretty fast read that will just drag you in and make you want to read more without you realizing it. I have said before I didn't like the beginning of the book, and I still stand by that, but the ending of it is so beautiful, and it brings up so many social issues that we're not aware that we have. So I definitely would recommend reading this one. And you know, the summer is a perfect time to read books that maybe require a little bit more reflecting. So this one's definitely it for that. Next up, we have Sally Rooney's Normal People, and I didn't like this book, frankly. I just didn't. I thought that it was frustrating and that the main characters were being stupid. But I think that there's a reason why so many people like it. You know, my fiance loves this. they've made a TV show about this. People are raving about this book. And I do think that it has some very intelligent life lessons to learn from it, such as maybe don't date stupid people. I didn't like this book. But yeah, I definitely think that, and again, like in the other ones, this is a book for reflecting. So you read it, you finish it, you close it, and then you kind of spend a couple hours thinking about it, and then you move on with your life to your next book. I definitely recommend this book for thinking. Mostly thinking that it's terrible, but you can also enjoy it if you wish. But yeah, Normal People by Sally Rooney. And if you also want to read Conversations with Friends, she also has written that. I haven't read it yet, so I cannot recommend it. But if you're like, want to be in the Sally Rooney train, definitely consider that. And last and definitely not least, Homeland by Fernando Aramburu. In Spanish called Patria. This book, oh my god. This book screams summer for two reasons. First of all, because the story is stunning and you want to have time to enjoy it and read it. But most importantly, because I bought this, not this copy, this is my fiance's copy, my copy's in Spain. I read this, I got this book, and I got it to go on a holiday trip when we were going on a trip. And my father looked at me and said, I get it on your Kindle because I want to read it and I don't have a Kindle. I want to read the hard copy. I was like, okay. So literally we sit down in the plane for like a 9-hour flight. This man takes my book, makes me download it on my Kindle, which was fine. I'm willing to share. And then I read it in one flight. I read it in like 9 hours. It was so good. I'll tell you what it is about in a second. But this dude took 4 years to finish it. He finished it last year. This happened in 2016. 16 or 17, I don't know. Either 16 or 17. However, it's been 4 years. This man just finished the book. So basically, the moral of the story is, I read a book, and I bought a book, and then I was forced to buy the same book twice, for nothing. But everyone in my family loved it. It follows, for those who are not very familiar with Spanish history, it follows a terrorist group called ETA, which was fighting for the liberation of the Basque country, make the Basque country independent from Spain. And at the height of their life, they were known for bombing cars, shooting people. It was a very violent moment in history, and it's still a group that is very present in Spanish political history and also in Spanish literature, because it just went on for years and years and decades. So this book follows the life of a woman who becomes a widow because her husband's shot by ETA. And I don't want to spoil anything because every part of this book is beautiful. But she basically goes back to her town, which is very much on ETA's side in the conflict after going back to the city for a while. And this town is where her husband got killed. So she goes back to this very raw emotional place, and it kind of shows her dealing with her past. So it's a lot of flashbacks and flash forwards. It shows her dealing with her past, looking at all of the life changes and the decisions made by her and the people around her, and how they affected the overall outcome, which is her husband dying. And her husband's death is representative of the thousands of people that died, during these years. It was a very violent moment in Spanish history, in recent Spanish history, and I don't think it's one that's spoken about enough. So I definitely would encourage all of you to pick this book up, learn a little bit about this part of Spain's history, because as well, it helps prevent other problems that might arise. For example, there's a very big movement in Catalonia for independentism, and I think that seeing how useless violence was with the Basque country, seeing as especially they're still part of the country, I think I read somewhere that although still high, the amount of people that want an independent Basque country is significantly lower. Like that came out 2 weeks ago, I think. So the Catalan movement was nowhere at all nearly as violent as this was. And I think that shows, and that comes to show that people do actually learn from their mistakes, and people actually, if history is properly explained to you, you do get to see it improve. And although I do believe that history is circular and we keep repeating the mistakes and accomplishments that we make over and over again, I think it's very important to shine a literary light to this type of conflicts, to allow us to understand and to grow as a society, as a community, as a country, as a nation. You know, you just need stuff like this. And what he did with this book was so beautiful. They've made it into a TV show, and I haven't watched it yet because it's in HBO and I don't have HBO, frankly. But honestly, read this book. It is so stunning. Even my father finished it. That's how good it is. Let's see if I can get something. Oh, yes, I'll give you some headlights for this. The book starts with the announcement of ETA saying we're gonna do a ceasefire, which was a big moment. I distinctively remember this because I was very young and my father opened a bottle of champagne and I drank champagne and my younger sisters drank. It was like a big celebratory moment. I still have the video in my head. So that's when the book starts, and then she goes back to her town where her best friend, well, her ex-best friend, is dealing with her son being in prison because he was part of ETA. And it just shows the two sides of the coin, two neighbors, two best friends who were both very much, they had a very close relationship. They were best friends, their husbands were best friends. And then a conflict such as this appears and it completely destroys what until then I'm sure they thought it was forever, like this. And it follows this story, and I loved it so much. I thought it was just so beautiful. I thought that I wasn't alive for the height of it, so I'm really going off of what my parents have said, but they felt like this was very realistic, and they thought that it captured the fear, the sadness, the discomfort, the stress, the anger that both sides felt. And for that, I think that everyone should read this book, especially if you're Spanish. If you're Spanish and you don't make an effort to read literature that represents your current situation, you're not giving yourself your best shot. That's the honest truth. So yeah, definitely read Homeland. I have been speaking for nearly 40 minutes, so I'm gonna stop now. These are my summer recommendations. I hope you guys like them. I think personally that they're really good. I've enjoyed every single one of them so much, except for 2, because I didn't like Normal People or The Kiss Quotient, but the rest I did like. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great summer. Summer's coming upon us, and although I know we're still not allowed to fly and to go on holidays and to celebrate summer in the normal way we're used to, please remember that just because things are not going the best doesn't mean that, you know, you don't get to enjoy life. You just have to figure out new ways of doing it. So maybe sit down, find the nearest AC, and just enjoy a nice coffee and get a book. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And also for more bookish content, don't forget to follow me at Book and Prejudice. Please don't forget to follow me at Book and Prejudice on Instagram. Until next week.